Grace and peace, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're having a magnanimous day with my long nails, city girl nails. It's your girl, Yammy, aka Yams B, saying you are now tuned into Can I Be Honest? And today, I have the pleasure, and I say this all the time because most of my guests lately have been people that I know, famous friends, let's say that. I have famous friends in really important places doing really important things, so it just makes it so easier for me to do it. Yay! So, again, I have the pleasure of having a conversation that you guys are privy to participating in with a very long-term friend of mine. Now, before she became a doctor and all, she was just regular old Natalie Williams from Palm Bay, Florida. And we attended the University of Florida. But she would go on to do wonderful things. I love to let women talk their boss talk, so I'm going to give her a platform or a chance to give y'all an introduction. But let me tell you this, that I think that Natalie Williams King, hyphen King, it's a big deal when they put a hyphen in their name. She is the bomb.com, everything that she is now. She's been from beforehand, and I did not expect anything less but this greatness that is going to manifest in this conversation. Without further ado, let me introduce to you some and other, I don't know how to, they used to say it in the church, it feels like so long. It's introduced to some and let me just introduce y'all to Dr. Natalie Williams King. Dr. Natalie Williams King, talk your talk. Tell the people about you.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm actually Natalie King. I took so long to change my last name that I couldn't hyphenate at that point. I just had to change it. I'm assistant professor of science education at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm also the founder and executive director of I Am STEM LLC, where our vision is to transform the face of STEM one community at a time. On a professional note, I serve as the chair of the Multicultural Education Special Interest Group for the Association of Teacher Educators. And I also serve as the chair for out of school time for the American Educational Research Association. As far as my research interests, it focuses equity in science teaching and learning, as well as the role of curriculum in fostering that equity. We're looking at community-based youth programs, as well as promoting Black girls in STEM education. A lot of my work just focuses on how we can bring communities together. How can we provide more comprehensive curriculum that embraces children's cultural experiences while preparing them to be productive and just critically conscious citizens in society. A lot of my work is not about workforce development per se, because I believe that if we do it well, then our children will be able to pursue those careers. However, I usually just try to encourage their involvement in STEM, create programs that interest them and that serve the needs of families. I'm also a National Science Foundation Career Award recipient, where I'm exploring the brilliance and STEM identity development of Black girls. And so the National Science Foundation has awarded $1 million to do a 5-year longitudinal study looking at how girls go through their as they transition from middle into high school and high school post-secondary, and the positive things that are happening in the Black community in order to foster that STEM identity development. I think a lot of times in literature, we read about what we aren't becoming. We see the statistics that say we're not represented. But there are a lot of things that are positive things that are taking place in Black schools, in Black and Brown communities that we need to be able to leverage and acknowledge and validate. And so that's where my role is these days.
In addition to that, because I told her that if she didn't talk about all the stuff that I wanted her to talk about, I was also going to bring that. She's a 3-time University of Florida graduate. That's important because University of Florida is not no punk school. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. She's also received several awards dating back from 2015 to 2008. The Florida Achievement Award, recipient of the, I can't pronounce it, Jumboku Basu Scholar Award. She's the recipient of the Keeper of the Caribbean Legacy Award, Outstanding Faculty Position Paper recipient and keynote speaker, Civil Action and Social Engagement Award, Out of School Time Scholar Award for the commitment of the field. And I believe she was considered for the 40 or 40 for the University of Florida. I don't know if you
selected for the 40 under 40.
Okay. In addition to that, she is an author. Hello? She's an author of a book entitled Let the Church Say Amen to STEM, Guidebook to Launching and Growing Extraordinary Youth Programs, which I encourage you to go to Amazon and look up. I'll also put it in the show notes so that you guys can have that as a resource. She is a phenomenal, also, not to be understated, she's a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So we can go ahead and celebrate that too. She is a pillar of the community. She's a beautiful person who I have had the privilege of knowing over 10 years. I think we're going into almost 15. Over
15.
God, yeah. It doesn't feel like a long time ago, but it is. It is. She's also, in addition to being the boss woman that she's married, right? She's married. She's also a mother. And I think those are significant things to mention, because a lot of times for women specifically, we are limited to some sort of like box. It's impossible sometimes, and it feels impossible to do all the things that we're doing in a community and then still muster up enough energy to be somebody's wife and to be somebody's mother. But I think that we all try our best to do what we can in that department. And I think that she is exceedingly not only a role model out in the community, but a role model for us who are parents and wives, or spouses or what have you, to remember that there's a possibility that we can also accommodate the purpose that God has had for us, while also building community in the context of family. Mm-hmm. So I'm super, super happy to have you here. And this podcast series is dedicated to kind of pandemic talk. And the significance of it for me is because I just know that there's so much, we're being inundated with information from all sectors. You can't go to a grocery store without maybe having some sort of debate on whether or not to wear a mask or not. And, or, what are we supposed to do with our children? Are we supposed to let them go to school, especially when we are getting societal pressures to go back to the workforce? How do we balance that, and what is right and what is wrong? So it only seemed fitting to have someone who is specialized kind of in this area. She serves not only as a professor, has not only served in the school system as well, but she is, a scientist. And I wanted my listeners to have a resource to kind of bounce back to help quiet the noise, if you would, the unimportant noise that we may be getting from the news or from our family members, or for me, it's someone at the barbershop telling me that it's insane to want to wear a mask or something like that. So with that being said, Nat, Dr. King, Dr. King, because that's what I'm going to call you, Dr. King, Dr. King, Dr. King. What are some of your concerns regarding this pandemic? And it can be from a perspective of how people are viewing it, or our responses to it overall, the world, the community, anything you can think of.
Well, we talked about, the accolades, but really, at this very moment, being a wife and a mom is what's most pressing for me, because those are just every day I'm trying to make sure that I'm making decisions that are in the best interest of our children. And if we're on, can I be honest? Is I'm scared. I don't have all the answers. I want to make sure that I'm doing what's right for them, but also looking out for myself and taking care of myself, because it's become very overwhelming. The kids have been home since March 13th, and, they were engaged in school. They had sports, music, band. So we had them engaged out of school. And so, they weren't home for a lot of times. And they came home, we were taking them somewhere else. And then by the time they came home, it was time for them to shower, do any kind of homework, let's eat dinner and go to bed. Our entire norm or routine that we've established has been turned upside down. And so at this present moment, I'm just trying to reconfigure a new normal. I'm trying to figure out, what does this mean for me as a professional? And what does this mean for my husband, who has to go to work every day, and is leaving the house? And what does this mean for our children, who unfortunately can't leave the house and can't necessarily participate in all the things that they were used to doing? And how do I just, self-care in the midst of trying to balance all of this? It's been a struggle. And so I'll share from a professional lens, but I also want to just share from a personal lens some things that I'm trying to put in place, just to make sure that all of us, I try to make decisions, and I get it. Every decision is not going to be the best one, but we'll learn from it and we'll figure out, okay, what can we make to work? So at this point, when we first came home, teachers were scrambling and trying to figure out what to do. We were on an extended spring break that never actually returned. We ended off school virtual. And so we're parents. And so a lot of our positions, at least I feel like I'm blessed. At least I have a schedule where I have a lot of deadlines, a lot of work that I have to do, but I have a little bit of flexibility in my schedule. And so what I decided to do was get up really early. Some days I'm up at 4:00 in the morning and try to beat my kids up to get a few hours in. During the days, I try to limit the amount of meetings, but still be available. And then after, I get them down or get them, make sure they're taken care of later on the evenings, I'm back around the computer trying to work and meet these deadlines. And so it's been quite exhausting. And so I think many of you, it will resonate that you're working harder now that you're home than you have before. And this because we've had difficulty compartmentalizing our lives. Everything is staring us in the face all at once. My being a wife, I need being a mom. I'm not only just having to teach them, now I have to make sure that I'm getting breakfast together and making sure that they eat. And, they may be arguing or fighting about something and I'm having to serve as disciplinarian too. All while they're expecting me to be present in these meetings, something that we could have, if we were in the office, pass by my office and, and we can handle really quickly in between things. Now we have to call a meeting for everything. Emails that I've been inundated with emails that they're coming quicker than I can respond. And so what do you do with all of this stuff when it's, it is literally hitting you at the same time? And so I'm not even sure if I, answered a specific question, but we could just talk and just be real because a lot of us are experiencing all of this. I have a rising first grader who he'll like to be around a device, but it's only to play games. It's not for meetings. And so when I try to get him to connect, he doesn't want to turn his video on. He's not motivated to connect with the kids behind the screen. He's not excited about that at all. And so now I'm faced with, okay, well, he has pre-existing conditions. I can't necessarily, I don't feel comfortable sending him to school, but I know this virtual learning isn't necessarily the best, situation for him. So what do I do for a child like that? I have a son that's in middle school. And he'll get his work done if he needs to. If he needs to connect, he will. But when he's faced with problems such as math, that he's learning new concepts and he's not grasping it right away, he gets easily frustrated and he shuts down. And so it's like a battle because teachers are having difficulty teaching subjects like reading or like mathematics. And kids are getting frustrated because they're not necessarily learning, or they have to watch Khan Academy videos or YouTube videos or different things like that. And it's not as authentic as it would be in a classroom. And so how do we recreate these learning spaces that are conducive for everyone? I don't think it's a one size fits all approach. I do think that we're going to have to try a few things. I know right now it's fully virtual, but we're going to have to try to be creative and innovative in how we create spaces within our homes that'll help our children.
I think several things that you said are really important. We both have children who have pre-existing conditions. So even in going to my daughter's specialist appointment recently, she was just kind of like, yeah, mom, I don't know what they're doing at your school, but your daughter, this girl, she can't go to school. So like when you're faced with those, it's almost like you have multiple windows open at the same time, right? And it's constant and it's ongoing. You're starting your day early, you're ending your days late, you're exhausted. And that's really the reality of it. I think one of the humbling things about this pandemic is that it puts us all on kind of even playing fields, you know what I'm saying? As parents, as, you know, spouses, as employees, as entrepreneurs, we're all kind of at level one because there's nothing else that we can do but to navigate or to pivot. And finding the right pivot, I agree with you, has been extremely challenging because, like you said, specifically when it comes to in the context of having a child who is used to having so much activity, and then they go from having so much activity to having none. And then even with from the perspective of learning, they learn better in an environment cultivated specifically for them. And then to have to learn from, like, for me, learning online would have been easy, no problem whatsoever. But I'm saying that from the context of someone who has foundationally had all of my primary education. Like something like this in high school probably would have been fine for me, but not so much, as you said, with having a rising first grader. Like our children, are your youngest and mine, barely have the foundational stuff, because when they were learning the foundational stuff, we got hit with a pandemic. So it's really fundamental to acknowledge the fact that we're not experiencing these feelings alone. The overwhelming feel, and I was talking to my husband about that the other day. It just feels like it's never ending. It shouldn't be this exhausting to work from home, but it has been. You know.
You know, it's so funny that you say that, because at times I feel like our children are starting to resent me. You know, I they want to do these things, and it feels like I'm the barrier. And if we don't actually take the time to share with them, okay, we are actually in a global pandemic. It's not me. I'm having to be the bad guy because you need to go and you got to sign behind the computer. You have to do this. You know, your teachers are expecting this. The school's expecting this. And sometimes I just want to be mom. Like I just want to. I felt like it was so much tension and conflict, you know, between my kids and me, and we were just like trying to figure out, I was feeling all the stresses from work and all these deadlines and all these meetings, and they were feeling the stresses that, okay, they have to do school but can't go to school, and have to sign on behind but don't really want to do it, and have these assignments to do and don't really know how to approach them, not giving enough support. And the teachers are feeling the stresses because they are thrown into this predicament, and of course teachers are resilient, they made it work. It wasn't ideal. And many teachers did not receive training to teach in this capacity. And so they're having to learn while doing and executing. And we're not necessarily acknowledging that. Mm-hmm. And so I think recently I've just tried to figure out, I'm like, goodness, Natalie, you've been going nonstop since you returned from Christmas break. This happened during spring break. I didn't have one. My spring break, I was revamping courses to make them on, you know, to turn on online. We were having all these meetings, trying to figure out, okay, what do we do with our Georgia State students? I had all these deadlines that I'm just now meeting some deadlines from a month or two ago. That's how bad it has gotten, and everything is just snowballing. And so I had to just literally prioritize, like, Natalie, what can you get done today? What can you reasonably get done today? And I've had to ask for grace. And in turn, I've extended that grace to others. And so when people are, you know, running behind and they're, you know, apologizing profusely because they didn't get something to me on time, it's like, I get it. You're okay. Here's what we're going to do, you know? And so I think in this time, that's what everyone needs, because we're all feeling the stresses of it. And what's worse is you have all this work looking at you, and then you have bad attitudes around it with people who don't understand. And just looking even in the academy, we have a lot of people who either don't have kids or their kids are grown. And so they're not necessarily feeling, so some of them are just thriving right now because, they're able to set up their spaces at home. They don't have to, fight traffic every day going to and from campus. And so they're able to reconfigure their structures. Not that they're not feeling the other stresses of things, but when you have school age kids in this day and age trying to work, some people are actually having to make the decision of whether or not they can work because they don't have, someone who could watch their kids, or now you're paying out all this money for someone you might as well have to stay home and change your job, because by the time you pay out all this money for childcare or daycare or another program, if they're even accepting applicants right now, that's a whole nother thing. And then now you're exposing your kids who may not be able to expose to other children. And so you're having to make these difficult decisions. And it's been increasingly more difficult for women, especially women in different professions. They're literally having to make a choice between their career and their family. And that's just an unfair position to be in at this point in time.
It really is. It completely is for anybody, because it's essentially, you're right. And it's almost sad to even think about it from that perspective, because it's kind of like if you've gone to school, for instance, and you worked your whole life to pursue a career, but it so happens that between you and your spouse, if that's the case, right? You and your spouse, your spouse makes more money than you in a certain in their profession, and you have children that you have to consider. What do you do? I mean, obviously, you're going to go with the spouse that makes more money because it's bringing more income. But what do you do with those feelings that you have concerning not meeting your own personal and professional goals? You know what I'm saying? No, I completely agree. And I think you helped answer one of my other questions, which was, how has the pandemic affected you kind of overall? You know what I'm saying? And what we discussed with what you were saying was that family, work, mentality, for me, the church context has been completely shifted. Nothing looks the same. And I don't think anything is ever going to look the same again, honestly. And I honestly don't know if I want it to.
Right, exactly. Look, the system was broken. The system was broken to begin with. And so I'm not looking for the system to return the way it was.
No.
So here's the thing. It's like this pandemic has actually presented great opportunities, for us to just rethink the way that we were doing things, right? You said something about like leveling the playing field, and it has to an extent where all of us are experiencing this. So it's not, globally, we're all, we kind of felt the effect of it, but some are feeling it more than others. But if you have money, you're able to respond to it a little bit more effectively. You have more choices, right? And how you respond. I want to share, because like, we're in this time of crisis where every solution is not going to work for everyone, right? And so I was saying that we're literally taking like a one-size-fits-all approach. But what's happening right now is the timeliness of decisions that are being made. So a lot of districts, basically, after all this closed, they said, oh, we're just going to close for an extra week for spring break. Oh, well, no, we're actually going to close for another month. Oh, well, nope, we're not coming back. We're actually going to stay for be out for the whole semester. And so what's happening now is that parents are saying, okay, well, to their jobs, well, okay, I just need an extra week. Oh, well, no, actually, I need an extra month. Oh, well, I actually can't return back because now my kids are not going back to school. And oh, by the way, a lot of summer camps are closed and canceled. And so you're literally...
And I can't send my kids to summer camp because I don't know if their safety is going to be affected physically.
Right. And so you're saying this whole thing of pivoting. And what's been even more difficult is that we had this whole summer where school districts literally could have been putting things in place to prepare for the worst. And what they did was send out all this messaging of, oh, we're going back to schools, we're going to get all this PPE and all this, they're just going, just putting out all these plans with no consideration for who their families are, with not even listening to what their teachers are saying and how it's impacting the teachers and what it means for teachers' families and their own personal structure. Because look, if you have this whole surveillance thing going on with your teachers and you're mandating that they come in, what happens to their kids? Who's looking after their kids? Are they getting an increased pay so that they can pay for some childcare for their own kids if you're mandating them to come in to teach instead of teaching from home? And I mean, a lot of times I sit and I think, and I know that, we need some brilliant minds to come together, but we still need some flexibility and structure, but also we need to figure out how can we use our time better and our resources better, because it's not fair for us to sit here and make all these decisions, change them instantaneously, and think that we're not going to get a backlash, or you're not going to have all these petitions coming in play where, people are saying, okay, well, now this no longer works for me. If you said that we were going to do this, you were having anything in place, how is it that 1 or 2 weeks before school is supposed to start, now all of a sudden everything is virtual? Where am I supposed to find people to take care of my kids? How am I supposed to do it? Because I'm not a trained educator. How am I supposed to provide home-based instruction? What is the schedule going to look like? Because school's about to start for my kids, and I don't even have a schedule of what the day is going to look like. When do they need to be behind the screen?
They told us in the county that I before, when they were doing the split session, so it was going to be half, and whoever wanted to be in person could be in person, and whoever wanted to be virtual could be virtual. They told me that the virtual kids, they were going to have to be virtual behind the screen for 8 hours a day.
Okay.
That doesn't work. That does not work for me, one, because that's me sitting next to my kid, making sure that she's on task, having her resent me. But it's also her, we talk, with this, there's been statistics that state that you shouldn't have your kid behind a screen anyway for longer than 2 hours anyhow, which has been over, bypass. Okay, my kids.
Look, trying to get her behind that screen for 8 hours and see what's going to happen.
Oh. Sis is going to rebel. I already know it. She's going to rebel.
It's not going to happen.
I think what's killing me the most is because, I have friends that work in the when I say I have friends that work in the CDC, I'm not saying just friends that just kind of do little, who literally dig into the science portion of the CDC stuff. But you don't ask them questions specifically about what's going on, because you understand that the privacy and there's a barrier. My point though is that it feels like if 6 months ago, mm-hmm. at the beginning of this let's not even say at the beginning of this pandemic, let's say after school, when school closed and we realized that we had been locked down for 2 months straight, right? If we would have taken the necessary precautions globally to do the thing, not even globally, in the United States, to do the things that maybe the Europeans had done, stuck to a plan, made sure that everybody was doing, mandated, and it's easy to say mandate. And I know that people are like, well, you're pushing the liberal agenda by saying mandate. No, I'm saying look at the people who did something and see, and look at how well it worked. Europeans, they stayed locked down for months, and now they're opened. If we would have maybe taken those same precautions with our children in mind, we wouldn't have to worry about that. School would have been able to open up because the line would have been curbed and lined or whatever. I don't know, the lingo.
Flat curve.
Yeah, it would have been different. My point is, if we would have been, but here I am. I remember a month ago, I went and I live in a rural part of Georgia. And I was at a gas station, maybe 25 people in it, 25 people. And it was kind of cramped in. And I had to go in to get what I needed to get. 25 people, one person with a mask, me. And I'm just kind of like, are you people kidding me? This is not some sort of liberal agenda. People are literally dying. It may not be you specifically, or people in your family specifically, but people are literally dying as a result of this thing. And you have proof, and it's not just in the United States. It's not just, it's globally, people are being affected by it. Why can't we do the simple things to ensure that this thing that we're having to deal with at the end of it, which is everybody having a debate on whether or not to send their kids to school, or starting to send their kid not school in the beginning of the school year and then ending in the at the end of August or whatever the decision is, or there being some instability. We could have done something on the front end based off of the results that mattered, and we would have had a different outcome. Like, I don't get it.
It's funny that you say that about the gas station, because some schools have already reopened, and you're seeing that students are not wearing their masks, they're not properly social distancing, and we ended up seeing where some students actually posted pictures of this taking place, and they got suspended.
Right.
You know, of course, backlash, but the initial response was to suspend them.
Which is crazy to me. Like, what are you trying to imply? So she can't share. Like, girl, I was up in arms. Sister was like, I'm ready to get in. What she said, I'm good. I want to get in some good trouble. And I was like, all right, sis.
Yeah, that you're leaking these. So they're saying that this one is sharing and just letting you see what the reality is going to be like if we reopen schools. And now you're getting disciplinary actions against you for leaking photos. And this is just, I mean, this is the day and age in which we live. I'm seeing where in some counties where parents are saying, you know, as taxpayers, they're requesting their right to choose between face-to-face and online. And they're circulating petitions that have been signed by thousands of parents. But then you also have teachers who are afraid to come back when they have some of the highest number of COVID cases and deaths in some of these counties, right? And so
Gwinnett County being that's been on CNN a lot lately, being the largest school system in Georgia and having one of the highest pivoting rates of COVID cases, is among them.
I think, you know, and it's funny because a lot of parents are beginning to take this into their own hands. And so we've seen this emergence of these learning pods or pandemic pods, whatever you want to call them, or micro schools. So essentially a lot of parents are beginning to come together. They're usually about 2 to 8 children. And they are beginning to even pull some certified teachers out of the school districts, and they're paying them privately. They're basically paying them, and they're saying, look, we're going to get our kids together. We might decide to rotate between homes. So it might be in my home this week. It might be at, you know, the neighbor's home next week. And, you know, we'll go and visit these different places. We'll see whatever structure they have there. And we're going to make it work for us. And so the problem is that, you know, you're creating these with friends, with families, with neighbors. You have to, you know, a teacher, but depending upon the teacher's experience as well as the group size, this can run you well, but $250 a week up to $600, $700 a week people are paying. Now, this is not a cheap, you know, endeavor.
Yet another gap between the rich and the poor.
That's right. So it's expensive, and it's just widening the inequities that we're the educational inequities. But more so, it's widening. You know, we always talk about this quote unquote achievement gap, but what we're seeing is this opportunity gap where I have money, I can do this. So okay, the schools got whatever they got going on. It doesn't even matter. I can bring in a certified teacher. We can get together. We can split the cost, and I can pay out of pocket couple $100 every week for you to come and to help me do this. So that way it's not dependent on me. I can still work from home, do whatever I need to do, but there's an adult who is trained in this area who can work with my own children. Now we have some other people who are still using like a modification of this, in that the families may rotate, and they may or may not bring in like a certified teacher. They may bring in somebody who can help, maybe like pay a college student or somebody else. And so they're still using the public school curriculum. So for example, my kids will just log on and they'll participate in the, you know, whatever whatever synchronous and asynchronous sessions, whatever assignments, and they would come and make sure that they're actually doing it. They're logging into their synchronous sessions, that whatever assignments they need to get done, they'll help them. And that still frees up a little bit more of my time, but it's not as expensive. But they're still using the public school curriculum to do it. And then you have a lot who are just transitioning into like the private sector, like some of the private schools. in order to get this done. You also have some after school programs who are now basically repositioning themselves to be an answer, because who needs after school if our kids are not going to school, right? And so they're actually now trying to see if they can get things in place so that they can serve as a site for virtual learning. So essentially they would do like what the a modification, that second model that I shared, where you would drop your kids off to the center. They would go behind the screen of the computer. They would join into their synchronous sessions, whatever assignments they had. They would have to, complete them with the help of whatever staff they hired there at the center. And so these are things that are happening, but what that requires is, one, trust. Because if I'm sending my kids to your house, I need to feel comfortable with your house setting, with who else is coming in and out of your house, and that you're actually going to take the proper precautions for safety and hand washing and sanitizing surfaces and all that kind of thing, that we'll have open communication where, look, if somebody tests, COVID positive in my home and stuff like that, we're always communicating to make sure that, everything is going to work out the way that it needs to. But it's a heavy reliance on everyone playing their part. And so you're still taking a pretty big risk in any of these that you're doing. And I just don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's a right or wrong way, but all I can encourage is for parents to figure out something that's going to work for you and your own family needs and structure.
Honestly, school starts on the 17th for us, and I still don't really know what this is going to look like. All I know is that Dr. King also has she mentioned a program called I Am STEM, which facilitates the learning of different STEM tools to help build children. And they transitioned into a virtual setting this year, obviously because of the pandemic. But my daughter was also a part of it from, I guess it was the inaugural Georgia sessions, right?
So she joined the face-to-face session last year on one of the sites here in Georgia. This year, I had two options. I could have taken a break, because I need one. Yeah. And after that spring break, that spring semester of just, this transition to virtual learning for me in my work as well as for my kids, I felt like I needed one, but I couldn't rest. And I couldn't because our kids, more than just my kid, our kids were where we didn't have, the end of the semester wasn't the way it needed to be, right? So what they should have gotten, I mean, at some point, I can just be honest, I could not continue following what all the teachers wanted. Yeah. And it was because there was not a lot of teaching. It was more of, here are assignments, here's work that you need to do. And it required so much of my energy and time with each child. I just had to pick and choose what we could do for school, and then I created my own schedule and curriculum for my kids that I knew that I could, keep up with, that they could get. It wasn't going to require me to say, okay, keep checking to see if they got it right. So, for instance, I did, abcmouse.com, and I made sure that he went through his modules there. We did Learning Academy. We did some Khan Academy for my oldest son. I did Epic Books for both of them, and said, okay, you need to at least read 20 minutes of books. So I had my own little schedule that I had going on, Splash Math, but it didn't require me to say whether or not you're right or wrong. When they put the answer in there, if it was wrong, try again, Right. They got the validation that they needed from whatever program they were doing and if I felt like it was going too fast for them, I would put them back a little bit, or if it was just repetitive and they got it, I moved them ahead a little bit. But it at least gave me a little bit more flexibility where I could get them to do something more independently and I could still semi-work. Yeah. And so we're just going to have to really think about what works for us and be open with teachers. I was open with the teachers saying, look, I'll do some of this, but I can't do all of this. This is what I will do, and here's what I'm doing to supplement the curriculum and what curriculum you have in place. And I'm hoping now that, that was just, immediate. I'm hoping that school districts have actually provided some professional development where they're not just uploading assignments and not actually teaching. I think that you cannot replace teaching with assignments and read these pages in this, a digital textbook and answer these questions. That's not going to work. And so with I Am STEM,
it puts a heavy reliance on the parents.
That's right. Yeah, and I don't mind being involved. That's not it.
Right.
But they have to also be understanding of people, working parents who are expected to be, in meetings or, taking care of other things that, their job is paying them to do. And that's the whole thing with surveillance, is that I think a lot of jobs are seeing that the productivity levels have probably decreased a little bit, especially amongst maybe those who are mothers and women, or fathers who are single and, taking care of their kids. So even if they're working from home, it's almost like this whole surveillance thing of they want to see what you're doing with your time, to the point where a lot of times they're calling meetings just to see if you actually doing something what you're doing. I know it's crazy, but that's what's happening in a lot of places. And so if you're with I Am STEM, what did I want to accomplish this summer was just to reconceptualize what does it mean to learn virtually, and how can we still create this rich community where kids can be very engaged, even though we had to be behind a screen. And so we went to the lengths of creating STEM boxes and shipping supplies out to parents. We changed basically my house into an I Am STEM, I want to say like an I Am STEM factory. That's what it looked like. We had supplies everywhere, boxes everywhere, trying to figure out how can we actually meet the needs of children. Things that we would normally do organically as, Camp Progress, this is the academic enrichment program, we had to think about ahead of time. And so some lessons, activities, supplies, materials, so that parents would have, whatever we weren't able to ship, that they could actually purchase them from the stores and they could be in place. And kids knew exactly what was happening. So it meant that we had to have different modalities, I guess, of communication with parents, so that all of us were on the same page. We have to understand that it's one thing when parents are dropping off their kids and they're coming into your classroom, and it's a whole nother thing that now parents are inviting you into their homes. And so it has to be a safe space. It has to be a safe a place and program and a form of education that's not going to be overwhelming, like just burdensome. Because at some point, look, this is a device. If it gets too much, I'm shutting it off, and we're not going to do it. Right. And so you don't want to get parents to that point. It has to be where it's supportive. It has to be where you're providing tools along the way to ensure that, one, they receive the professional development or training to operate the technology. They know where to find things when they're ready. And that, there's this open communication between what's needed to happen at the school as well as here, and that you give sufficient time for them to be able to get prepared or to have things in place for kids to participate. And so we just really have to step back and think about, have those kind of considerations. I think especially now that school is about to start, you're saying you don't know about what the scheduling is supposed to be like, what kind of materials do I need to have in my house? Like, these are things that we should have done over the summer and had ready. Our parents now, if we're a week out, they should have already been in professional, development on how do I access everything? What do I need to do in place? How do I create a sacred space for my child in my home? These are things that we have to teach and that we have to have open discussions about, because parents may have participated in programs like I Am STEM over the summer, and they can give you some feedback on what you can do to make sure that it works on your behalf. We actually had some of our own parents and kids go back to their schools and districts to tell them, look, if we're going to do virtual learning, I need it to look like this, to begin advocating on what it needs to look like for their homes and for their families. And so, there's so many, I feel like we have more questions than we have answers, but with rising questions presents more opportunities for us to just, be innovative, be creative. I was in a virtual conference this week, and I'm gonna kind of pause on this because it really resonated with me. And Dr. David E. Kirkland, he's from New York University, he made a profound statement. He says that we need to listen thickly and that we must move at the speed of trust. And I said, well, how do you listen thickly? Can you operationalize that for me? And I think a lot of times, especially right now, it's this sense of urgency. And so we have to move quickly. But he said, look, you have to co-listening sessions. You have to sit and figure out what's happening. Who's the family? Who's the community? Who are your teachers? What will actually work for them? And with that being said, how can you move forward, but move forward where you're not leaving a whole bunch of people behind? Because I think right now we're just moving and we're expecting people to catch up, and that may never happen. And he's saying move at the speed of trust, meaning even if you have to pause long enough to make sure that everyone is on the same page, if you take the time now to establish that a sense of community and trust with your family, with your community, with the students, it's gonna take you much further than if you're trying to speed up now and you're leaving everyone behind and they feel like they had no say in the decisions that are being made. You're not considering their families, you're not considering their kids. And so I think in this moment, that's what I want to recommend to all of us, to our politicians, to our parents, our administrators, those who are in school board and who are making these decisions, that we have to move at the speed of trust. We have to do what's in the best interest of our families. For us as parents, I just want to encourage us to just establish a support system. I mean, some of us are in places where we may not have family that live close by. And so we have to figure out how can we have open conversations with people around us? How can we make it work for us in our community? We're not going to get anywhere trying to go alone. We have to formulate some kind of a community. And then at this point, we also have to make sure that we have access to technology, that we have access to internet, that we can familiarize ourselves with the platforms and with the programs. I also try to, encourage families, I know everyone may not have a big house. Some people may be in apartments, some people may be in other people's homes. We have a population of students who are homeless. So we have to figure out what is that sacred space in our homes or in our communities where our kids can learn. So if you don't have a whole room that you can dedicate to learning, fine. I need you to find a hallway or corner where they have a wall in the background and they can have this space. So I know that when I'm in that space, it is for me to learn. I think where I went wrong, even during the spring semester, is that, wherever they were in bed, I just grabbed the laptop, grabbed the iPad, and just sat on their lap. Okay, here, tune in. That's not going to work. I want home to feel like home. And so what that means is, I may set up this one corner. That's right. So when you're here, this is for learning. You associate this with learning. It's no longer going to be in their rooms. And so when they go to their rooms, yeah, you can watch TV, you can play your games, you can relax. We have to begin compartmentalizing our spaces, or else everything will begin to blur together, and that's what becomes overwhelming. A place to plug in their devices, some headphones, look at the school schedule and try to figure out as best you can, how can you rearrange your own work schedule or family schedule around that. For meals, I begin to keep it easy where, okay, you can heat this up, you have cereal and stuff in the house, things that they can easily grab and does not require me. So some days I will cook, but other days they can come down here and they can fix them themselves. And so we've kind of set up that little structure and just have a process in place. And for me, I do recordings, I teach. And so if and when they might need to interrupt, what does appropriate interruption look like? Don't just come and start talking. Come, ease yourself, all right, let me see you, and I'll mute myself and I'll put my finger up, and then I'll give you a moment to talk if I can. And so we have to establish these new routines in the house so that we're able to coexist in multiple places at the same time.
That is really, really good. A really good, to your point about having a structure. In my office, this is my office, where I have my little, like I have my, my recording stuff where I work on like content or music and stuff like that, or where I brainstorm or where I decompress, are two different spaces. But it's a space separate from where I lay down, where I work. And oftentimes if I'm working here, I'm not working in my bed, because I don't want those two places to feel the same way. And we only think about it from a perspective of being an adult, but when we're dealing with our children, they need those separate spaces just for them too. So in my office, there's a space just for Tabitha. That way, when I'm working, she can work with her desk. One of my good girlfriends is coming to create. I think it's called a dream board or something like that. That just kind of has like little things to keep her motivated that she can look at and then go back to work. And like you said, there's going to have to be space and compartmentalization on my part.
Yeah.
And I think there's a part of me being Haitian that that doesn't resonate with. And I think that that's the part that I've been fighting with the most during this pandemic, because it's kind of like what you were saying about like there's some things that I can do versus some things that I can't do. That's not a part of the Caribbean makeup. We do everything, and we're supposed to do it well. And if we don't do it well, that's the problem. So having to kind of restructure my mindset and not put that on my kid. Because that is a perfectionist attitude that can create problems for the future. You know, and I want, and like you, and to your point, I want her to continue to enjoy learning. Yeah. So having to facilitate, like, and it may just mean sometimes the learning, the way that we learned or the scope of learning is going to be from a field trip perspective. So we're going to have to go to the Civil Rights Museum. We're going to have to go to, you know, the zoo or something like that, where we can still be socially distanced and she can still be learning, but in an environment that's not confined to her desk and a laptop. Yeah. This is really good, Dr. King. I'm so happy that we didn't go down the traditional platform, but we had some honest dialogue and some honest feedback about kind of where we are and what we can do overall to kind of help families and just all of us as we're navigating this thing that may continue on into 2021. Yeah. I guess my thing for you is, can you just if you wanted to give a benediction on this conversation, could you just give us a benediction, just kind of to close us out?
I think my benediction or my final words are going to be, just trust the process, and do what works for you. I just don't believe in being overburdened by, you know, all these pressures that are coming in. And sometimes you're just gonna have to block out the noise. There's so much that's coming from the school perspective, work and family. And so prioritize, do what works for you. You have options, and so exercise those options, and then and move forward. At this time, if you have things that work, share them. If you have things that don't work, share that too. And so we just have to remain open, communicate, and build community. Build community. Do not go at this alone.
Awesome. Again, this has been Can I Be Honest Pandemic Talk featuring Dr. Natalie, I'm going to say Williams King, Dr. King. She is a wealth of knowledge. What I'm going to do is in the show notes put like a link to the Amazon book so that you can kind of get some information for that. Same thing for I Am STEM. Is there any other way that the people can kind of reach out to you for, I think the word is guidance?
For guidance, well, what we're trying to do now is I'm working to put together resources, and I'll put them on the I Am STEM Camps website. So resources, not just during a pandemic, but also educational resources. I'm following up with parents who participated this past summer in the camp, so that I can hear from them basically what are you doing? What have you decided to do? And what are the gaps? And then we'll work as a team to figure out, okay, how can we begin to fill some of these gaps? And so as we continue to offer some programs and other things, then I'll make sure that we, update the website to reflect that. And so that's the stage that we're in right now. As far as just wanting to follow me, my handle is Dr. Natalie King, on Twitter, on Instagram, as well as I have a Facebook page, Dr. Natalie King.
So be sure to follow her, like and get attached to her stuff, especially if you're a parent or teacher or professional in education needing some resources. It's a wealth of knowledge. I'm not just saying this from just because she's my friend. I'm saying this because I have partnered with her in the sense of I've implemented my kid in her program, and I trust it, specifically for my kid who is not necessarily who's not I like to learn from a digital platform person. It has provided options and expanded kind of my knowledge on how to better assist her throughout the school year. So Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Natalie, for being here with me.
Absolutely.
I'm
Thank
so
you for that.
excited. No, this is really really good. I think this is going to go over well for a lot of parents because you were speaking the truth. Let me go ahead and pause this real quick or stop this real quick.